In 1947, the American government said it was a weather balloon. But there is a recording of what really happened inside a secret room, and it was kept hidden for decades. Today, I'm going to tell you about a mysterious package that arrived at the home of a man named Lawrence Spencer in 2007. Inside that package were old military documents, interrogation transcripts, and the confession of a woman who spent her entire life carrying an enormous secret. A secret about Roswell, about a survivor, and about what that survivor revealed to her. The 2007 package. Everything starts when Lawrence Spencer receives by mail a heavy envelope. No explanation, no obvious sender. When he opens it, he finds a stack of old documents. At first, it looks like bureaucratic stuff. Work schedules, internal reports, memos. The kind of paper nobody would read by choice. But then he starts noticing the stamps. Military stamps. All connected to the American Army. All pointing to the same period, the 1940s. And in the middle of all that paperwork, there is a different type of document. Interrogation transcripts. Except these are not ordinary interrogations. They are attempts to make contact with something that was not human. We are talking about the Roswell Army Airfield in the state of New Mexico. On July 8, 1947, that base turned into a different world. Civilians mixed with military personnel, everyone tense, armed guards in numbers far above normal. The reason? The military had announced the recovery of a flying disc. The nurse who saw everything. Among the military personnel that day was a nurse named Matilda Donnell McRoy. She was one of the very few people who truly knew what had happened, and for decades, she stayed silent. But time passes. At 84 years old, sick, and knowing she didn't have much time left, Matilda decided she was not going to take that to her grave. The documents Lawrence received were hers. They were her accounts. On that day in Roswell, Matilda was on her way to the hospital when she was stopped by two military police officers. They were polite, but she knew it was not an invitation. It was an order. They took her to a hangar. At the entrance, a high-ranking officer was waiting. He got straight to the point. An unidentified flying object had crashed in the desert. Among the wreckage, there was a survivor. Her mission was simple. She only needed to check if anyone required medical assistance. There was just one detail. The colonel made it clear that the survivor was not human. The being in the chair. Matilda walked into a dark room at the back of the hangar. What she saw was burned into her memory forever. Sitting in a small chair, there was a creature about 1 meter tall. Gray skin, enormous head, no hair. Each hand had only 3 fingers. No visible nose, no mouth, no ears. The body looked more like a structure than a living being, almost artificial, nothing resembling a human being on the inside. But Matilda did not feel fear. What she felt was something she herself said she couldn't quite explain. Calm. A calm that made no sense at all given that situation. She approached slowly, no sudden movements, and sat down beside the creature. There were no visible injuries, no sign of pain. The being was quiet. She leaned in to say something, and before she could open her mouth, a thought appeared in her head. Not like her own idea, like something placed there by someone else. The being was communicating through direct thought, telepathy, and the first thing it said was that it was not injured, that body was only a kind of suit, that it didn't need food, it needed water, and that only Matilda could receive that communication. Everyone else in the room was blocked, for a reason the being didn't explain at that moment. 6 weeks of contact. During the following weeks, Matilda came back every day.
The being identified itself as Aural, female, and the conversations kept going deeper. Matilda described the sensation in a strange way. She heard nothing, but she knew exactly what Aural was saying, as if the thoughts arrived ready, complete, with no need for translation. Everything was recorded, analyzed, documented, hundreds of pages. And what Aural began to reveal had nothing to do with what anyone expected to hear.
The war we never knew existed. Aural spoke about a war, not a war between countries, a war that had been going on for thousands of years, spread across entire regions of space. She described herself as an official of something called the Domain, a civilization so ancient that its history stretched across trillions of years. They had expanded their influence across thousands of galaxies, controlling planets, moons, asteroids. But before the Domain, there was another force, the Old Empire.
And unlike the Domain, which operated through expansion and control, the Old Empire used brutal methods: forced labor, nuclear technology, mind control on a planetary scale. The Domain won that war, but even after the fall of the Old Empire, its structures remained scattered across the universe. Abandoned bases, automated systems that nobody shut down, technologies that kept running on their own. And according to April, one of those systems was right here, in our solar system. Her mission was to investigate that system. During the operation, the ship was struck by a powerful electrical discharge, lost navigation, and crashed.
What Errol said she was.
This is where the story gets even stranger. Errol stated that the body the military were looking at was not her, not really. She was an entity that existed beyond matter, a pure consciousness. The body was just a temporary container, a tool. And she said that humans used to be like that too. Before being trapped in biological bodies, before aging and death, humans were also capable of existing outside the body, of moving freely, of remembering multiple lives. So why aren't we like that anymore? Errol's answer was direct. Earth is not just a planet. It is a prison. The imprisonment system. According to Errol, this system was created by the Old Empire around 8,000 years before Christ. The idea was simple. Any entity considered dangerous, rebellious, or with perceptions outside the standard would be sent here. They were called the Untouchables. Billions of these entities were confined to Earth, trapped in fragile biological bodies. But what keeps the system running is not the body. It is what happens after we die. There is, according to Errol, a barrier around the solar system. When a person dies, that barrier intercepts the consciousness before it can escape. It is taken to processing stations. There, the erasure begins.
Not just of the last life, of all previous lives. Everything that was lived simply disappears. And then comes the programming. New beliefs, new fears, new moral constructs, all chosen to control behavior. When the process is complete, the consciousness is sent back to Earth in a new body. Birth, life, death, erasure, repetition. No memory, no way out. Life on Earth did not arise by chance. Errol went further. She stated that the entire biosphere of the planet did not develop naturally. Every life form here was created with a purpose. Even the mechanism of sexual reproduction was introduced intentionally, so that the system could sustain itself without needing constant intervention. Life began to reproduce, grow, and die without anyone needing to keep watch. An autonomous cycle, perfect for keeping the prison running.
But Errol said something that took Matilda a while to understand. She said that some people still carry, in some way, fragments of a knowledge that was erased long ago. That certain ideas that arise in some minds are not genius, they are memory. pieces of something that existed before. After those conversations, Matilda began remembering things she could not possibly have known. Images of technologies she had never seen. Principles that nobody had ever taught her.
The end of contact. On August 12th, the military decided they no longer needed an intermediary. Matilda and Errol were separated. The military tried to force direct contact. They connected equipment to Errol. They began applying electrical impulses, gradually increasing the voltage. They believed they could get answers through force. What they didn't understand, according to the documents, is that that method was exactly the same one the old empire used to erase the memories of its prisoners. By applying the impulses, they were not trying to communicate. They were destroying the consciousness inside the body.
Errol disappeared. What remained was an empty shell. Attempts to reverse the process did not work. All materials were hidden. Matilda was forced to sign confidentiality documents, and the story was buried.
What remained? In 2007, with little time left to live, Matilda sent everything to Lawrence Spencer. In the letter that came with the documents, she wrote that after she died, her consciousness would go through the purification process one more time, that she would forget everything, that the only way to preserve that information was to publish it. 1 year later, the book Interview with an Alien was published. The story immediately generated a reaction. It is considered one of the most discussed cases of contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. Some believe every word. Others say it is the most elaborate fiction ever written on the subject.
Matilda is no longer here to confirm or deny, and the American government has never spoken about what really happened in Roswell on that day. So I ask you, do you think this story was hidden from the world? That Matilda told the truth before she died? Or is all of this nothing more than the greatest fiction ever created about extraterrestrial life? Leave your comments below. If this video kept you hooked from start to finish, the next one is going to make you question a lot more things. It's already waiting for you.